This is the CHGO Cubs podcast. My name is Corey. I am joined, as always, by Brendan, and we are coming to you on Sunday. It is September 15th. And Brendan, rarely do we jump on the air just 3 outs shy of a Cubs game ending. But Bears are on Sunday Night Football. We've got to clear the way. CHGO has a big night ahead. And I think, Brendan, had the Cubs not dropped the first 2 games in this series, perhaps we would have said, you know what, let's wait. We gotta, and I think we've all kind of reached the point where it's like, let's just do the show.
Well, Lance Briggs said, hey, he has to watch you and me just to get motivated to do his own show. Right. So we're providing Lance Briggs and the rest of the CHGO Bears crew some motivation and inspiration right now. That's our goal.
Yes, and we will talk more about that later in the show. Obviously, if you are a Bears fan, the CHGO Bears team here on the CHGO Sports YouTube page and on social media, of course, we'll have coverage before, during, and after the game. We'll touch on that a little later. As we are watching this, the Cubs have gotten an out in the bottom of the 9th inning. They lead 6-2 as we start this podcast. Like we said, the game was running a little long. And we're just trying to get our show in here. Brendan, if you had told me a month ago that the Cubs would go to LA and take 2 of 3 from the Dodgers, and really nearly take all 3 in that series, I would have said, wow, did they keep that hot streak going? Did they sneak into the playoffs? And those questions would have been very wrong because they follow that up in typical fashion, Brendan. I feel like this week sort of sums up the 2024 Chicago Cubs, which a lot of things do, but playing the Dodgers competitively, winning a series on the road in LA, and immediately just laying eggs against the Colorado Rockies, that's the 2024 Chicago Cubs we know and love.
Can I be fully honest with you?
Yes.
I don't care. Yeah. I'm done. I don't care about the game right now. No offense. I care about PCA hitting the home run.
Yeah.
I care about Bellinger looking good. I care about the performances. I don't care if they lose 10-0, if they win 10-0. I'm over it. I'm moving on.
Yeah. So I don't think you're alone in that. As we've talked about throughout the season, this has been a very trying year, I think, for everybody's patience and just the way that this team has gone about winning and losing games. So many blown games early in the year, the up and down ride of this offense that at times looks really good and capable of multiple crooked innings per game. And then the next series looks like one of the most inept offenses you have ever seen. It's been very frustrating, and I
could just tell you had a few flashbacks as you were saying that. Your eyes kind of got a little big. It's been traumatic, man. Some of these offensive absences, multiple shutouts. That's the story of the 2024 Cubs. Highs and lows. Too many highs, too many lows.
Yeah. So there is a lot to, as you said, there's a lot to focus on. Kyle Hendricks, a very nice start on Sunday.
They should DFA him.
Yeah, right. Not that has, I think, long-term implications. But I know, you were going back and forth with friend of the show, Michael Cerami, on Twitter this afternoon. We may be witnessing more than likely some of the last starts and outings of Kyle Hendricks for the Chicago Cubs, and someone who is monumental in Chicago Cubs history. So nice to see him have a good outing, probably a couple more. And, as we've seen, we've done our fair share of farewells and see you laters and things like that over the years. It's time to sit back and enjoy some starts from the professor because there's no guarantee that we see more of them in a Chicago Cubs uniform. Michael Busch with a really nice weekend here in Colorado. As you said, Cody Bellinger heating up, had a nice weekend or a nice series against his former team in LA. Shota Imanaga, a good start against Yamamoto. A lot of good stuff. Like you said, PCA, of course, the PCA of it all. Perhaps the most single important thing
Yeah,
happened this season is this
absolutely.
development of one Pete Crow-Armstrong. But yeah, I do think it's time to kind of turn the focus to you're going to have, I believe, the Cubs are 75 and 73 now. So, not too many games left to go. It'll be 13 after this one is finished up. What do you want to see in those 13 games? Who should be playing? Should they be calling guys up, bringing guys up on the 40-man, things like that, and giving them a shot, even if it's a short one? And then, unfortunately, we're going to have a long off season to discuss the future of Jed Hoyer.
Mhm.
Will the Cubs spend any money, et cetera, et
Mm.
cetera? I know they're asking me for more money, Brendan.
What's with that? I saw some season ticket holder drama.
I don't think it was drama. I think they
I
are
just saw it all over
they're
social. I'm
they're
like, "Oh,
playing
something
2 less
happened."
games in Chicago because the 2 games in Japan are Cubs homes games.
And they're asking to
And
raise your prices? Is that
yes, and
by how much? Like
it's
10%?
it depends on where you're sitting. I think for
Okay.
some people it's a couple percent, for some people it's, closer to 10. Um, I don't know. I wouldn't call it drama. As I was saying, Luke, Cody, and Ryan had a good discussion about it that I was bothering them in the YouTube chat about. I think it's just one of those things. I know what I'm paying for. I've said this many times. Like it's not a good investment. It's not why I do it. I do
Yeah.
it because I enjoy it and I like having the tickets. I like going to the games. I like getting access to my Pearl Jam concerts and playoff tickets when they make the playoffs once every 10 years. But even if it was an extra $100, like they haven't made a real they have not made a playoffs that Cubs fans can go to in closer to a decade than it is further away. Like the idea that they want more money from people is a joke, but
Well, they can splice
they're
up
they're
what
a
you
business. I don't expect any different. As we say that, the Cubs win. They're back, Brendan. I was waiting for that
So
fight.
how
No,
many games back are they? 6 now? Is that what it is?
no, I believe it
Is it still
is
7?
5,
It's 5? I'm
five
back.
and a half. Excuse me.
I'm back. Let's
The
go.
Braves play tonight. They are looking to complete the sweep over the
Okay.
Dodgers. The Mets lost earlier today, so at the moment it's 5 on the Mets, five and a
Listen,
half
you
on the
win
Braves.
every game here on out, you never know what happens.
Yeah,
You can win
right,
13 in a row, it's happened before.
right.
Just
Um,
saying.
totally. Yeah, I'm waiting with bated breath for that to happen. Um, Yeah, anyway, about I don't have more to say about the season ticket stuff. I know what I'm paying for. I'm not surprised. They're a business like anything else.
Well,
Um,
that's why the Cubs aren't
but
as good because of people like you. Because they know they can splice up this audio right now,
yeah,
and they can use it for their own advertisements, you
right.
know?
Yeah.
Access to Pearl Jam
It's a
concerts.
it's a great ad. I feel like an idiot, but I do it anyway. Is a great ad. No, it's
That's
it's just one
Cub.
of those things that it's disappointing, like, even if they were like, "Hey, we're gonna cut them by $50," it'd be like, "Oh, okay, that's nice, at least. It's $50." But instead, they're
Yeah.
like, "Actually, you guys, we need more money. We don't deliver the product on the field." But so,
Well, they gotta pay for
whatever.
accidentally going over the luxury tax this year on
Yeah,
this playoff-bound
yeah.
roster we have.
Anyway,
Alright.
yeah, looking back at this week, and then I do want to talk about how some of the prospects are performing, things we'd like to see um, going forward here in these last couple weeks. But yeah, man, I think this week was, really sums up the 2024 Chicago Cubs. You look ahead at the rest of their schedule. The most of this schedule is at beautiful historic Wrigley Field. 3 with the A's, 4 with the Nationals, and then the last road trip of the year is 3 in Philadelphia, and then they finish with 3 at home against the Reds. So, look, if you wanted a schedule to go 13-0 in your last 13, that is certainly the one to do it. But it does appear, by all intents and purposes, barring something truly insane, this is going to be a very similar season to last year, Brendan. Different in the sense that, they weren't holding a playoff spot that they let slip away from them, more like last year, but very similar in the sense that they're going to be probably right around that same win total plus or minus maybe a few, and miss out on the playoffs once again, with inconsistencies, poor performance, in different stretches that put them kind of closer to the bottom of the league in some of those periods. And yeah, I don't blame people for not being preemptively worried that they're going to roll it back and we're going to have the same discussions going into next year's spring training that we're having now.
We'll see. There's a lot of directions they can go. Unlike last offseason, their prospects are at a point of maturity where they probably could earn a roster spot on opening day if the roster is flexible enough to permit it. That means other teams may be more willing to consider those guys in trades. The offseason picture could be very different. The way we go about talking about the next step forward is likely, I think, going to be very different. So I do understand the potential pessimism because they did not go out in 2023 and substantially improve the team, much to your displeasure and my displeasure. But the way we will talk about this team now and in the offseason is very different than what we've talked about this team in the past 3 off seasons. And in some respect, I'm looking forward to it, but with an underlying shared perception of pessimism or lack of confidence given what we've seen over the past 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot in our YouTube chat. If you're watching on YouTube, hop in the chat. Let us know what you're thinking. If you're listening on your podcast feed later, obviously we appreciate you. Tweet at us if we don't cover a question or topic that you had. But I see a lot of the questions that this is sort of going to turn to, even just in our YouTube chat right now. Like, will they be in on Juan Soto? Should we be talking about firing Jed Hoyer? Will Cody Bellinger opt out? And I know even just your quick allusion to the prospects contributing and them being more ready has probably set our dear friend Niren I'm sure he's very angry at you for that suggestion.
What did I say?
No, he's just not big on waiting for the prospect lottery tickets to hit and not acting like a big market team.
Listen, there's a way to do both.
Yeah. So I think that there's a lot of these questions. I don't think that Jed is in danger. I think just listening to, what Tom has said and the general tenor of those conversations, I suppose people were waiting perhaps to see if they really did miss the playoffs, which is obviously becoming, significantly kind of locked in here. Possible. I mean, you never know the conversations that they're having, but I don't think that that is going to be in the discussion. I haven't thought that for a long time. Should it be? That's a bigger question. There's a lot of healthy things with this organization, but as we talked about kind of coming into the year, I think that missing the playoffs is an unacceptable outcome. And that's what we're staring in the face. So there were a lot of discussions earlier in the year about certain players needing to perform and not doing their jobs. And of course, these things will continue. But I just don't think it's going to happen is basically my point. But yeah, let's talk about more specific players and we'll look at the 40 man and we'll take a look at all of this. But we do need to hit our first ad break here. So let us thank our wonderful sponsors, and we'll be back in a second.
With Empire today, you get shop at home convenience, the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, and a low price guarantee. Empire today is the best place to get new flooring. So, of course, they have copycats, but Empire cannot be beaten on quality, service, speed. So, competitors advertise low quality products that Empire simply won't carry. Empire won't promise the lowest prices because anyone who does that is putting flooring in your home that they would not put in theirs. Our virtual floor designer is a great way to see how new floors will look in any space. It's easy, just snap a picture and instantly see how new floors will look in your own room. Shopping for floors at a big box store can be frustrating. You might talk to someone today who was working in plumbing yesterday, but flooring is all Empire today does. They live and breathe flooring. So you can be confident you're getting honest, upfront advice. They also service their own warranties. If an issue does arise, just call Empire. They service all warranties themselves. You will not have to track down a manufacturer's phone number. Schedule a free in home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 off discount when they use the promo code CHGO. Restrictions apply. See empiretoday.com/CHGO for details. Penrose Brewing, Geneva, Illinois. Beautiful Geneva, Illinois. Seltz Up hard seltzers with real fruit led by Lemon Seltz Up, a national gold medal winning hard seltzer with real lemons. They created our unique twist on a lemon shakeup with a house made hard seltzer and pureed lemons for a throwback to warm weather and county fairs. Also available is Lemon Tea Up, a half and half inspired hard seltzer. And just released this year is Transfusion Seltz Up, inspired by a popular golf cocktail with grape, ginger, and lime. Penrose is available at your local beverage retailer or visit Penrose's taproom in Geneva. For more information, go to penrosebrewing.com or follow them on social media at Penrose Brewing.
All right, Brendan. So as we said, I think when we look back on things, of course, a couple weeks to go, there's nothing more important that's happened this season than PCA's development. His potential that he has shown, his overcoming of certain issues that plagued him in his short stint last year, and just giving us that glimpse of like, okay, the star potential is clearly there. It has shown up on an MLB field against MLB pitching, MLB defenses, etc. It's there. Obviously, it is not a sure thing that you can just assume he continues that positive development. And if he puts up, I don't know what, 2.5 wins above replacement, 3, whatever it's going to be at the end of this year, you can just extrapolate that to 162 games. We know better than to think that prospects work that way. As Theo always used to say, it's not always linear, but that he showed that potential at all is the most significant thing that we will see. Do you think in these last 2 weeks, is there anything, we'll talk about some of the guys in the minors that maybe we'd like to see get a quick cup of coffee here, just like get that MLB experience, et cetera, et cetera. But with the guys that are on this roster right now that are getting significant playing time, is there anything else in these last 2 weeks? Of course, a 2-week sample isn't going to change your mind on certain things or anything, but anything that you're watching from any of these guys where you're like, I'd like to see this guy finish strong or see if this guy can finish out the season at the pace he's currently at. Anything that you're still looking at, or have you you have your notes? I've made my conclusions about these guys. I'm ready to proceed into the offseason.
I'm ready to proceed in the offseason. The number one priority is health. That means Justin Steele hopefully coming back, pitching one start would be nice to see. If he doesn't, disappointing, but the attempt to come back is nevertheless encouraging. So if he can start one more time, it does give you more confidence in his strength going into the offseason. Other than Steele, it's a matter of just staying healthy from the positional side. We've seen improvements from Dansby Swanson offensively over the past month. Crow-Armstrong, who you alluded to, has been spectacular since the end of July. We're talking with PCA since the end of July, July 28th, batting over 310, has 7 home runs, striking out at an under 21% rate, a 140 WRC plus, with the best defense in center field and the best among the best, number 2 technically behind De La Cruz, the fastest speed. So his overall second half is one of the most significant developments a Cubs prospect has shown probably since 2015 when they brought up the core, or maybe even 2014 with Rizzo. What he's done has been spectacular. That being said, with PCA, Dansby, and so on, stay healthy. Next 2 weeks likely will not have a huge bearing in how the offseason proceeds, but Also, Isak Paredes finish strong. That would be nice. Ultimately, just get me to the offseason. I'm ready to talk about what's next, how we manage some of these prospects, how the roster shapes up with so many bats in AAA, with so many roster spots at the big league level locked up. That will be the prevailing question that is going to be challenging to address by the front office, I think. It's not an easy method to address this.
Yeah, I also expect, I mean, and I see it in the chat. I expect this offseason is going to be rather hostile towards Jet Hoyer. Like this is I, I think I think in past years there was a lot of kind of understanding the process and the timeline of things and looking at them building up the system, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think there's going to be a lot of grace this time, Brendan. I think people are pretty fed up. And if he is allowed to finish out his contract with the last year, which I expect him to be allowed to do that, if there's not, significant change in the roster this offseason, or at least a more concerted effort to push some chips in and
Yeah.
move this team up, in the projections and just in their overall kind of perceived standing, as their roster sits, this is going to be a very discourse filled offseason. Um,
It's going to be fun in a
I
weird
don't know that it
way,
is. I don't
perhaps.
know that it is. Because I gotta be honest with you, I am not my confidence level is not great
We've been
in
saying this for multiple years.
yeah,
This is not news, this discussion point. I think it's
yeah,
surfaced because of the way the season ended. But in my perspective, us sitting here right now, September 15th, likely finishing 83 to 85 wins was always the outcome.
yeah.
So the angst that we're seeing from fans is well warranted, but the angst we've expressed, you and I, has dated back over the past 18 months. This seemed in my mind the likely outcome, and I was a little perturbed how they were going throughout the process 18 months ago. I understand the logic. The logic is paying across the roster 18, $20 million contracts, and hopefully some of those exceed what you pay those guys for. Also getting positive development from the farm system. It just hasn't been enough. So I understood the process, but I was still uncomfortable risking that without the track record from the guys in the front office having done that before. So now we're here in 2024, entering 2025, and the reality is setting in for fans. And I think even for myself, that what we were talking about for so many months and years is now becoming a legitimate reality. And it's very disconcerting. But it could still work out too, which is where you have that balance, potential optimism.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I just don't I think the way this roster is constructed, it would take a lot of maneuvering to give them the flexibility that
They're
I
gonna
think.
have to move guys around. They
Yeah.
have the flexibility. We're gonna get into it, PD Paps, you mentioned about the 40-man stuff and the prospects. We'll get into it. But we have locked up contracts at shortstop, at second base, third base now. We're
Yeah.
talking next 3+ years at
Left
minimum
field,
for these
right
guys.
field.
Ian Happ, 2 more years. Seiya, 2
Yeah.
more years. PCA, 6 years of arbitration. The only available roster spot without locked up, guaranteed contracts is first base, and Michael Busch may make the argument to have secured that position. So where do you improve? Is it DH? Because all across the diamond, you have guaranteed contracts, some expensive, some not expensive, but those least expensive ones, you still may want to scrape out the most value. Nico Horner, Isak Paredes, for example.
Yeah, well, and I think, one of the early rumors, for the offseason that was floating out there was the Cubs potentially pursuing Corbin Burns. And, I think that's another one. Like, as you look and try to evaluate the pitching from this year, a lot of really
Mhm.
good stuff, and stuff that's very encouraging as you go forward. But as the year played out, you also saw what I think one of the key concerns was, and something that they need to think about and address in this offseason. And we talk about it all the time, Brendan, like you need that depth. You need a lot of arms. You need guys that can go from April to September, obviously, hopefully at some point through October. And you just saw that depth get tested so much this year. Justin Steele, great again, but dealt with some injuries. Shota Imanaga, great, but what does his second year in the MLB look like as he gets a little older? He's already right in his 30s. Like, what does that look like? Do teams adjust to him now that they have a full year of facing him and video and everything? And then you have, again, Jordan Wicks dealt with injuries. Ben Brown's still dealing with injuries. Jameson Taillon dealt with some injuries. He's in his, getting toward his mid-30s. Really nice year for the Cubs. But I think if you were to look at this team going into next year, you still, I think, need to make moves to kind of like level that pitching staff up a little bit and shore up your durability and your confidence that you have a group that is able to take you from the beginning of the season to the end. I feel like we have different versions of the same conversation, which all can kind of be summed up. And it's true with the offense too. It's a lot of good pieces. There's a lot of good things here. There are certainly many, many teams in the league that have worse situations in a lot of individual areas of a baseball organization. But the Cubs have work to do to get a lot of those areas to an upper tier or like elite level, however you would want to phrase that. So without some creative maneuvering, without prospects like exploding and just giving you that top tier kind of performance, there's work to do, man. And as you were just kind of going through some of those contracts and stuff, it's not a clear, we've been in off seasons before, and I suppose Juan Soto is the clear answer. I'm not even doing that. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I
Yeah,
did it
neither am
last
I.
year with Juan Soto and Shohei Ohtani. I allowed myself like the little creeping sense, like, okay, it's time to turn it on. They have to make a big move, and I was just dead wrong. And I don't feel like doing it again. So as we sit here in September, they're not going to get Juan Soto. I'm not even going to allow myself to think that. If they want to change my opinion and act like a big boy organization for once in their lives, great.
Okay, don't get worked up over there. You're working yourself up in a tizzy, I can tell.
Brendan, they're about to miss the playoffs again.
I know they
Like,
are.
I,
Yeah,
I
but they'll need
know
this.
this has been somewhat of a foregone conclusion, and I shouldn't get worked up about it. But as we sit here
You
and
are, I
play
can
it, it's
tell.
like it's a joke that we're doing this again. They're
Well,
fighting to
yeah.
stay above 500 on September 15th after losing a series to the Rockies. Like, I don't know. I don't know, man. Like, yeah, it's easy to get a little pissed off.
All right, well, how about this? Let's do the ad break here. I'll you give yourself a second to
Sure.
breathe over
Yeah.
there, and then we
Yeah.
should talk about the prospects. Again, PD
Yeah.
Pabs asking questions about it. That's been the topic. People want to hear about the prospects, what you do with the 40-man, how the Cubs proceed with the remaining 2 weeks on potentially calling up some of those AAA bats. So we'll get into it and set the stage for that. Okay. So let's go ahead and take our ad break here. Price Picks. Price Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Price Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Price Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on daily action with your friends and become part of Prize Picks community today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. My favorite right now, Caleb Williams, passing yards, gets you 1 win on Prize Picks every week in September. That's right. Only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss this deal on Prize Picks because it's gone when September ends. So download the Prize Picks app today use code CHGO and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CHGO on PrizePicks. They get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. We have a lot going on at CHGO right now. We have Bears playing Sunday Night Football. We got the entire CHGO Bears crew in studio right now. Sarah, our lovely producer, is taking the time to produce our show, but she's been telling us it's a very busy studio right now. We also, for the Cubs, have been very active with a lot of meetups. I know CHGO has tailgates for the Bears, but we've had Fridays 120 with Cody and Braggs in the bleachers. We have great writing from our guy Ryan Herrera and Jerry Willis. We're at Wrigley every single game. Post-game shows, even for if you want to kill yourself, the White Sox lately and the mess they've been. But Sean and the rest of those guys have been doing great. If you want to be a diehard right now, you can. You get 20% off events. You get dope merch, as Luke will say, for all teams, including the Cubs and including the shirts you've seen on the bottom left of this podcast on YouTube. And we have our wonderful Showtime shirt displayed right now on the YouTube show. And guess what? If you become a member, you get one of these free shirts. And you also get access to the member only Discord, the CHGO Lounge. I'm in the Discord occasionally. I see some spicy takes in the Discord. It's very fun to communicate with all you guys. And I know the community's been growing quite extensively. It's been very fun. So sign up, become a diehard today. You get a lot of different perks, and it's a very fun experience taking the Cups sometimes when they're good.
And before we finish up, just if you're watching on YouTube, you can use this information for tonight. If you're listening later, keep this in mind for future Bears game days. Bears coverage all night. Pregame at 6:20 here on the CHGO Sports YouTube page. Postgame here as well. Then Lance Briggs and Alex Brown, the Briggs and Brown Show, will have their postgame. All of that tonight. Don't forget the show with Cole Kmet, of course. And then on September 22nd.
You want to get this season over with.
I do.
For
week 3 December against the Colts at Joe's on Weed. Watch party, live show. Lance Briggs, Alex Brown, Corey Wooten, whole CHGO Bears team will be there. Check it out at allchgo.com. We appreciate your support of everything CHGO. All right. So let's talk about, should they bring prospects up, Brendan? Minor league season ending soon. Who should that be? Does that matter? Does the 14 games matter for someone to sit in the dugout? Do they get the Alexander Canario treatment where they get one pinch hit at bat and then they sit on the bench for 10 games? Is that worth it? Do you have any preference of things like that? Anybody in particular? I mean, some of these guys in AAA are lighting it up. So as you said, it is a little different than last year where you do feel like, and that's what I was thinking. The farm system isn't as a place where you expect that next Chris Bryant to show up and be your starting third baseman and win the MVP and Rookie of the Year. I think obviously PCA has that potential. But when you look at the system, what excites me more about it is if they did go out and supplement this roster, get another big bat for this order, shore up the pitching staff, you have those prospects that really clearly represent that opportunity to come up early in the season, mid-season, and really give you that kind of extra potential. You think of guys like Matt Shaw, Owein Caissie in particular. Those are the guys that you're not able to sit here right now and say, oh yeah, they're going to be ready on opening day 2025 and they're going to be great and an all-star. You have no ability to project that at this right exact moment as we sit here. But the way they've developed and their trajectory and how they're performing right now, it does give you that opportunity. Okay, if this team has some juice early in the season, then you have those prospects to come up and kind of give you that extra lift, which of course we saw a lot of in a season like 2015. Kyle in particular, a guy who comes to mind in that vein, where the team performed well. You did some stuff that offseason. Then it was like, you know what? This guy's like knocking the cover off the ball. Let's try it. Like, let's see. Then all of a sudden,
Hendricks,
the
right?
team.
Not Schwarber, Hendricks knocking the cover off
Yes,
the ball?
exactly.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm making sure.
He did have 2 RBIs off Jeff
He did.
Samardzija in a playoff game.
He did.
So
Yeah.
don't look up the batted
Which
ball.
year was that?
Don't look up the batted ball data on that
We won't.
hit.
But what year was that? Remind me.
That was 2016, the first round against the Giants.
Which then they went on to win the World
They did win that series.
Series?
Yes, they did eventually win the World Series. Sorry, I
Got it.
wasn't sure what you were
2016.
asking about.
All
Yeah.
right. It's okay. Just clarifying.
So that is what excites me about where this system is at, is that I do feel like it's reached that point where it is ready to supplement a good and winning club, but you have to get there first. And I think the concern, I think in particular, again, our friend Niran in the chat and some folks who are probably tired of hearing about how good their prospect system is that's one way to use your system. Another way to use your system is to say, well, we don't want to go and sign this guy because we don't want to block this guy a year from now or 6 months from now. And I would guess that there are a lot of people in the fan base that would suspect the Cubs are going to go the latter route rather than
Yeah.
the former, which I was just talking about.
This is such a complex discussion. If there were not 40-man implications, it wouldn't be this complex. To PD Fab's point, should we call up Matt Shaw, James Triantos? In a perfect world, yes, I would call him up tomorrow. The problem is the 40-man doesn't permit that from happening. They're not on the 40-man roster. We've seen throughout the entire year ire towards the bullpen failing. Part of a successful bullpen means maintaining flexibility with your 40-man. Right now, we have 21 pitchers on the 40-man and 19 position players. If you add a position player and subtract from the pitching 40-man, then you may reduce one of the potential ways you create a successful bullpen. Now, the question is, if you bring up Shaw or Triantos, who are not on the 40-man, what is the likelihood that yields value in April and May? And I think the way the front office looks at this is not likely, where the 40-man spot for a pitcher is more likely to yield value in April or May. My thinking, which I'm not saying is correct, but my thinking is, what is the likelihood that if you were to promote Shaw and Triantos now, that by June, July, and August, they can be contributors in the form we've seen PCA this season? And my thinking is, well, the ceiling's quite high. The range of expectations is quite large, given what we've seen in recent memory, especially with PCA. So if there's a way to balance bullpen development, pitching 40-man construction while adding Shaw to the 40-man, then I would prioritize that. That would be my priority. However, I don't think the Cubs are going to do that based on how they've proceeded over the past few years, especially looking at the Matt Mervis scenario in 2022, where he was not called up because of the 40-man implications. And ultimately, that led to Julian Merriweather being signed after being DFA'd by Toronto, and he became a staple. So that's your counter to the Matt Mervis scenario. That being said, we have, and by the way, Caissie's not on the 40-man, but we do have Alcantara on the 40-man. So if there's one guy to get called up, you could see Kevin Alcantara on the 40-man. So, that could be one guy we see right away, and I wouldn't be surprised if he is called up.
Yeah, I don't think we have any clear, we've talked in the past about frustration with not using this time productively. And I think back to like Matt Mervis not playing the year prior to then coming up and being thrown into the fire so that you didn't have an idea of his MLB capability coming into the year. You waited until you were in the year thinking about, of course, this year, the very delayed decision to start letting Christopher Morel play third base, which was basically an experiment that was taking place at the MLB level in MLB games, like for the first time, basically. I don't think there's any glaring situation like that with this group, or that they like absolutely need to be figuring out at this exact moment. But it is always nice to get those guys the experience, kind of push things towards, giving a guy like Caissie or Shaw or Alcantara, etc., that a taste and kind of putting it on them to be like, all right, you're right there, but you have to push your way to make this roster and be a part of whatever these next plans are. But I think at this point you're talking about 13 games. It's a very small sample. I think beyond getting guys experience at the MLB level and kind of again that little taste of this is the big time. Here's how guys act at this level. Here's what it feels like to be at this level. I don't really think it has that much value or that much significance towards anybody's
So you'd be
development.
against calling them up and preserving the flexibility at this stage.
Yeah, I don't see any reason to maneuver the 40 man and do that. Again,
PCA was called up last year at this
yeah,
time, and look what it prompted. Significant mechanical changes, right? And look at
yeah,
the
but
changes he
that
put with
was
it.
that was longer than 13 games,
He had 20 plate
wasn't it?
appearances. It was
Well,
somewhere around this
well,
time. He had
that was an issue we all discussed
But
with
he
David
had 20,
Ross.
but
Yeah,
but the point being 20 plate appearances was sufficient to nudge a change he worked on in the offseason with
sure.
Dustin Kelly, right?
Yeah.
And that accelerated the development he needed to go on this plus 310 batting average run.
I listen, I should say I'm fine with it. I'm just saying it's not a significant amount of time. So I'm not going to lose any sleep if they decide not to do it. I would like to see it. It's always cool. Some of the guys deserve it. And as you said, it can have real benefits, but it's just it's a small sample and I'm not going to lose any sleep over it.
Yeah.
It just feels a little too late at this point. They hung around in the race a little too long to like really commit to that kind of strategy as early as I think you'd like to. And so how they decide to deal with these next 2 weeks, like whatever, man. It's kind of the
Yeah.
attitude about the whole thing. Like you do whatever you want.
Well, and this is how you operate when you're like, on the verge of being, eliminated. So I get it. I mean, I'm different than you with this. I actually do get a little frustrated at times with the what I perceive to be a lack of proper weighting on major league experience in a 20 plate appearance sample. We've talked about this for months, and even Greg Haas and Brian Smith and Zumac, we've talked about this too with them. I fully recognize the 40-man implications, and I'm not even arguing that is needed to, or rather, that needs to be sacrificed to promote the development. I totally get that. At the same time, I think it's unfortunate, and I wonder. I'm just putting the idea out there. I wonder if there's a way to prioritize keeping your bullpen options accessible while being a little bit more aggressive in player development. I want to get this going fast. I want guys to fail. My intention is not for them to, call them up and immediately be good. That's unrealistic. My intention is to fail as fast as possible. That way, to our point about Matt Mervis, we aren't using that bats with Eric Hosmer behind him or using that bats with Trey Mancini behind him because we know what he needs to work on and we know the likelihood of success in a 30, 40, 50 plate approach sample.
Yeah.
So I do get a little annoyed with that. Now, I will use the PCA example of an extreme change in the form of facing 100-mile-per-hour pitching prompted significant mechanical changes. Hitters are unable to be in the same environment, both professionally and against major league pitching in Iowa. It's just not possible. So the next step of their development requires facing the next step of competition. So in 20 plate appearances, I would like that to happen. I would like to be really, really fast. And you know what? If Shaw fizzles out, if Alcantara fizzles out, well, let's do it as fast as possible
Sure.
because the likelihood is they're going to fizzle out. Prospects don't work out most of the time. So in my perspective, try to balance aggressiveness in that form with keeping your options available for your bullpen and pitching, and mirror and marry those two concepts. I have been dissatisfied with that from this
Yeah.
front office. I have believed at times it has been a little unequal weighting of two different intentions, the pitching and the hitting.
Yeah. I think my feeling really on the entire organization is that it is time long past, but it is time to start. The focus needs to be winning in 2025. That is how decisions need to be looked through the lens. It has been it has been too slow of a process. When it all started, when they traded everybody in 2021, the thing that Jed kept putting forward was prioritize not sacrificing the future, right? When making certain moves in some of those
Yeah.
off seasons. And it has been a slow development. Again, the organization is healthier than it was at that moment. They have succeeded in a lot of those goals, but it has taken too long for one of the
And
biggest
that's not
markets.
an opinion. It's
Right.
taken we are in year 5,
Yes.
Corey. The
So,
5th offseason.
yeah. So I think like when we are making these decisions for the prospects for how to approach the offseason, I am tired of the leverage, don't want to mortgage the future for the present, but making smart moves that improve, many years in the future. You have got to win in 2025. You needed to make the playoffs this year. This is unacceptable. This is such a low, like, poor standard for a team of this caliber, an organization of this stature, for people to continually and that number of people is dwindling, but say like, well, we're rebuilding and the prospects are better, and it's about the future, blah blah blah. It's such a low standard for this team. Organizations that spend way less money turn things around quicker than the Cubs have on this run. It's too long. You need to focus all of your decisions. And it doesn't mean trading all of your top prospects for 1-year contracts to win in 2025, right? Like, that's not what I mean. But
Right.
I am tired of every decision this organization makes seemingly coming through the lens of, well, if it only helps us in 1 year, then we're not going to pursue it. We need only contracts that are several years or cost controlled or other. You have got to make the playoffs in 2025, and you need to make decisions that are acting like it. This is too long a process. And so if being more aggressive with the prospects is part of that, great. If
Mm.
trading from that prospect depth is part of it, great. Spending money in free agency, all of these avenues are possible ways to get better. And so it pairs with your discussion of like, should you bring guys up? Should you be aggressive? Should you put, your foot on the gas and say like, let's get these answers now? In a broad sense, I agree with you. Like,
Yeah.
you cannot have every decision be through like, well, we want to make sure we're still well set up in 2027. You haven't won a playoff game in almost a decade. That has to be your focus. A
Yes.
healthy, wonderful organization for the next decade. Of course, that's the goal. And nobody is suggesting to completely mortgage your future, but everything has been so cautious and risk averse as to not disrupt this timeline. Well, the timeline sucks, Brendan. Like, so enough with the time.
Easy
What
over
is the
there.
timeline even anymore?
You're working
You
yourself
know?
up. I
Huh?
hear I say you're working yourself up. I
They
hear
want
you.
more money from
I
me,
hear
Brendan.
I know
I'm
they're not
I'm
asking me
it's
for
so
money.
annoying.
I get
Like,
it. But I think the
I feel like we're talking like I genuinely sometimes when we do this podcast, Brendan, if you took away the wonderful graphics that our production team here at
oh, I thought you were gonna
CHGO
say my
make.
wonderful graphs.
Well, yeah, those two, the
Thank you, I
wonderful
appreciate
graphics, and
it.
also as I say that, shout out to our guy Joey Spathis, has been here a while, and
Yeah.
just deserves the shout out. Great things for our
Love you,
man
Joey.
Joey. But if you took away the graphics and we didn't say any names, like the last few years of this podcast, would you think we were talking about the Chicago Cubs? because I think I could convince people this was like a Cleveland Guardians podcast.
I wish
But
we were
even as I say
wish
that,
we
that's
were the
what I'm
Cleveland
saying. They win
Guardians.
games.
I wish we were them.
It
Are you
sounds like we're
kidding?
talking about a team that has a $50 million payroll and an owner that like refuses to spend any money.
The whenever this is brought up, I see different areas of fans infiltrate. I get one sect of fans saying, well, you can't overspend because, you're going to hamstring yourselves years from now. Look at all the bad contracts that they've signed in the past. And you got those fans. And then you get the other fans saying, oh, well, you need to wait for the prospects to develop and you're going to have your pre-arb guys that way. I take a step back and just look at the results. It has not worked. There has been successes. Michael Bush has been a success. The prospects, the rankings across the league are generally high and optimistic about the Cubs' young players. That's been a success. But ultimately, where I fall back on is not to provide the path forward. I don't know. You don't know. We're
Right.
fans.
I don't get paid to do.
I'm in the fifth offseason, and it's been too slow. The mistake process by this front office has been too slow. It is perfectly fair to criticize the front office and being a mid-80s win team for the fourth consecutive season and be upset and question if the people in charge are ultimately the ones that should be making the decisions going forward. It's also perfectly fair to look at all the good they have done and think,
Sure.
okay, this could work out. But where I fall back on, just to finish up my thinking, is it's not acceptable. This is too slow. The rate of failure for the front office is too slow. And if Jed Hoyer does get the pink slip, is that what they give when you get fired? A pink slip?
Yes.
Okay. I've never been fired. You can tell, right?
Wow.
If he gets, I know, kudos to me. If he gets a pink slip, it will be for one reason and one reason only: too slow. And whatever that entails, if it's not developing prospects fast, not hiring the right scouts, not hiring the right coaches, not going out and spending money on shorter term deals, whatever you want to criticize them for, it will all be under the umbrella of too slow of a process. I need to see aggressiveness,
Yeah.
acceleration in every facet of the organization.
Yeah. You have to figure out a way to there needs to be urgency. It's late for the urgency. It should have been this year.
I don't care about
There
urgency. I
has
need to see production,
No, but
execution.
I'm saying again, like too much of the decision making and discussions from leadership have kind of been in that like we're building something and it's about, creating years of success. It's like can we get 1 year of success, please? Like we're begging for it. Um, in our YouTube chat, Tracy K says, sure missed the old explicit podcast.
Those were the
We can break
days.
that out. We're allowed listen, you guys have watched our guy Cody Delmendo. We're not banned from cursing here on CHGO. But I'll be honest with you, this team doesn't deserve it. I said it a lot.
Can't
People
muster it
kept
out of you.
asking me in the middle months of the year, like where I was tweeting that Go Cubs Go Shawn Michaels video every game when they were winning. And people were like, where'd it go? And I go, Heartbreak Kid doesn't work for teams that are under 500. This team doesn't deserve it.
Well, they're
Like,
back over 500 now, Corey. You can whip it back out.
great. Good for them. And I see Edward in the chat says, Corey, you may get sick and tired of this team, but you'll still shell out money
Oh,
for
yeah.
season
Well,
tickets.
yeah, you're an
We
absolute
talked about that
moron.
a little bit. And yeah, as I said, I will. I love it is my favorite thing in the world to
It's
do
so funny. So
is
stupid and
go to
so
Wrigley
funny.
Field and watch Cubs games and experience that with my family, my friends. We've had these tickets for a long time. I know it's not a good deal. The wool is not being pulled over my eyes. Um, it's my money. Like, and I know what I'm doing with it. And am I throwing it in the toilet? Maybe. But I don't know. That's just where we're at.
Yeah.
So I put my money where my mouth is. You can't tell me I'm not allowed to complain because I I'm putting my money where my mouth is.
I mean, you think we heard reports, just to wrap up the show, but I know it's Bob Nightingale. I know, all the stereotypes with Bob and him tweeting out stuff being the opposite. But there was a report last week where he said verbatim, there's internal friction within the front
Yeah, I
office.
didn't care about that.
I'm just saying.
I
It's
didn't
been
care.
a
Bro,
report.
listen, first of all,
Here's why I
go ahead.
brought it
Go ahead.
up.
Go ahead.
Here's why I brought it up. The front office executives are not happy themselves. Okay. How can you be happy with the results? You missed a postseason. That is a failure. So their execution has been absent. That
Yeah.
is just a reality. So you being upset and complaining, they are likely doing the same thing. It is
Good. They
okay.
should be.
I know it is okay to be upset that they missed the playoffs as a fan. Those
Yeah.
same front office executives are probably doing the same.
Yeah. All I was going to say is, one, I don't care about anything Bob Nightingale
I'm not
says.
taking that as gospel. I'm
No,
bringing it
I
up
know,
for a
I know
point.
that, but also I feel like reading that report and like the social media conversation and stuff like that. It was like, yeah, man, they're gonna miss the playoffs again. They're all high fiving and sipping champagne. I would certainly hope not. And look, like I've had the great fortune of being in some baseball front offices, and yeah, it gets tense when the team isn't good. Like, people's jobs are on the line. It's just like any other job. Like, if the performance isn't there, that your job is potentially in
Yeah.
jeopardy, and those around you. It does get a little tense in those moments.
Like they think they're doing the right thing. They think their process is
And
going
now
to
they have to
work. And
reevaluate.
now
Yeah,
they have no choice. It hasn't
right.
worked.
It's shoved right in your face.
Yeah.
So I let's wrap up here, because the Bears are playing on Sunday Night Football, and this Cubs team doesn't deserve too much more of all
Okay.
of our weekends. At the end of the day, another very confusing week. But even if you were holding out like those glimmers of hope, you can't lose those two games to
Yeah.
start this Rocky series. It's nice that they showed up against the Dodgers. And a good reminder, right? This week, I think, was of like, this team was never as bad as their worst moments and never as good as their greatest moments, as I think was very much on display this week. They can hang on the road with one of the best teams in the league in the Dodgers, although a very injured one, and then lose a series to the Colorado Rockies. Those are your 2024
Nice.
Chicago Cubs, everybody. And that is exactly what you get when projections team systems look at you and say you're about like an 82 win team. This is exactly what that looks like. It is
This is what it
horribly
looks
frustrating and very annoying.
Gosh.
Cody, Luke, Ryan, we'll have you covered. The whole CHGO Cubs team will have you covered for the rest of the year. These last couple weeks, enjoy it. There will be no baseball for a while after that. Once the playoffs are over, that the Cubs are likely not going to be participating in. Don't forget to check out. Sure. Don't forget to check out all of Ryan and Jared's great work at allchgo.com. And as I mentioned, if you're listening to this live, CHGO Sports on this YouTube channel has a full night of Chicago Bears coverage. You'll get perspectives from fans, beat writers, literal professional football players, Bears legends, the whole thing, all contained in one place on the CHGO Sports YouTube page. So do check that out. If you're listening to this later on your podcast feeds, you can expect that every time the Bears play. So get used to it and find your new home for Bears game day coverage. We will talk to you again next week, and we'll focus on 2025, I guess.
Sure.
We appreciate you joining us on this Sunday. Brennan and I will talk to you again soon. And as always, go Cubs.
We all silly like the mayor.